I share the same outrage as the president concerning what Donald Trump was revealed to have said on that tape. I just don't think it's a big surprise given what we knew about Donald Trump all along. My concern is not just the election, it's the theological credibility, the moral credibility of America's evangelicals. Donald Trump fails the baseline test of character. I think Hillary Clinton does too. And just on policy positions, evangelicals are not going to support Hillary Clinton, given the Democratic Party's absolute devotion to abortion and threat to the sanctity of human life, among many other things. But when it comes to Donald Trump, evangelicals are going to have to ask the huge question: is it worth destroying our moral credibility to support someone who is beneath the baseline level of human decency for anyone who should deserve our vote? Long term, I think that's a far bigger question than the 2016 election. This election is a disaster for the American people. It's an excruciating moment for American evangelicals.
Right.
But Donald Trump is just beneath the baseline of decency we should expect.
Charmaine?
Well, you know, Al Mohler is a friend of mine and someone that I have always respected. So I want to take a slightly different tack with all due respect, Al. Listen, voting for someone is not the same as endorsing their entire character. And I'd really kind of like to harken back to something you were talking about a little bit earlier, Don, about selective outrage. You know, Donald Trump has not been running as a choir boy. That's not who he is, and I agree with you when you said and Al said as well, we shouldn't have been surprised about this. It's really kind of interesting to me that all of a sudden this has turned into something that's been blown up. You know, actually, Donald Trump himself agreed with the president. He came out within hours after this tape came out and gave a pretty sweeping and comprehensive apology. And let's face it, we all know that that's not something that comes really easily.
Charmaine,
to
I have to say that I was here,
and then he came back again in the
we
debates
lived
and
it,
said,
and it took him quite a long time to come out with a response. He gave a response, a written response that didn't satisfy anyone, not even conservatives. And then it took him. We were on the air until almost 2 a.m. waiting for a response to come from Trump Tower. Now, I don't want to read you wrong, but you're saying he's not a choir boy, and we should have known these things. But does that excuse? Does that excuse what he's talking about sexual assault?
When he was responding to the Access Hollywood. So however long it took him, he did come out with a statement that was pretty strong. Then he came back in the debates, and I was really intrigued by the fact that he used the word hate. He said, I hate this. I hate that I said that. And he apologized again. So, I'm not here to defend what he said. I completely repudiate it. I feel like he's repudiated it. I really think we haven't seen anybody who's coming out and endorsing or thinking that there was anything right about this. But my point would be for evangelicals that, there's a scripture that we talk about a lot that says you have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. And let's be honest, the gentle part comes pretty easy a lot of times. It's the wise part that's often really hard, particularly when it comes to politics. Politics ain't beanbag, and it's hard to sort things out. And I think when you're looking at candidates, you have to look at the totality of, who they are and also their agenda.
I don't want to overlook.
And that's what's really the issue here.
I don't want to overlook Reverend Mohler, but I have to ask you this. I have to follow up with you, Charmaine, because as recently as September 30th, he had tweeted this at 5:30 a.m. about Alicia Machado. Did Crooked Hillary help disgusting check out sex tape and pass Alicia M. Become a U.S. citizen, and so she could use her in the debate? I understand what you're saying about politics and what you're saying about, we're not electing a choir boy here, but there seems to be more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 incidents where he has done something one more repugnant than the next. How do you make an excuse for that? How are people making excuses for that?
I don't think you make excuses about it. You recognize it. And here's the thing that we have to grapple with.
You still support him even with all of that.
A lot of this came out in the primaries. He still went on to win more votes than anyone ever has in a Republican primary. And so I think you have to look at this, and particularly as women who are trying to make a decision between 2 candidates, because it comes down to these 2 candidates. And for me, I look at it and I think this is a man who I don't believe has gotten enough credit for the fact that he elevated the first ever in the history of the GOP female presidential campaign manager. He has a daughter who is a very respected business professional.
He had two
and mother.
campaign managers who were men
He has
before
come
that.
out with a tax policy that recognizes mothers
not
who
to
stay
cut
at
you
home.
off, I
He's
have
talked
very
about
limited time,
homeschoolers.
Charmaine, and I've got to get back to Reverend
Sure.
Mohler, because Reverend Mohler, I want to play this. This is an exchange between Ben Carson and my colleague Breonna Keeler about this Access Hollywood thing.
With whom are you hanging out that you hear people talking like that?
As I was growing up, people were always trying to talk about their sexual conquest and trying to make themselves appear, like the Don, Casanova. I'm surprised you haven't heard that. I really am.
I haven't heard it, and I know a lot of people who have not heard it. And I think
maybe
they were shocked.
maybe that's the problem.
Or is that the problem, that they're, just are not hearing enough of this unacceptable language? I've never heard Christians make more excuses for bad behavior than I have with this particular incident.
No, and that's my big concern. And by the way, I think Charmaine is one of the most articulate defenders of human life and human dignity. So I'm glad to appear with Charmaine. And I say this with all due respect. Evangelicals are going to come to some different conclusions in the sanctity of the voting booth. But I hope every one of evangelical Christians in America thinks about what it's going to mean to vote for someone, much less to publicly support someone that we would not allow our children to be around. And I disagree with Ben Carson entirely. Frankly, I don't even care the language that goes on in a locker room. I find that extraneous. The big question is, can we put up with someone and can we offer them our vote and support when we know that that person not only sounds like what he presumes and presents as a playboy, but it's a sexual predator? This is so far over the line that I think we have to recognize we wouldn't want this man as our next door neighbor, much less as the inhabitant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right.
And long term, I'm afraid people are going to remember evangelicals in this election for supporting the unsupportable and defending the absolutely indefensible.
I've got to go. Thank you, Reverend Mohler. Thank you, Charmaine Yoest. I appreciate it. Coming up, Bill Clinton's accusers to some